Let me ask you something. When you sit with the Quran, something unusual begins to happen. Something this world isn't built to encourage. The noise quiets. The spinning stops. The speed that's been pulling you in 100 directions suddenly eases, like someone letting go of your collar. You find yourself sitting still. Not just physically still, but still in a way your soul hasn't felt in a long time. In that stillness, there's power. Not the kind of power that screams or shows off. Not power dressed up in money, status, or applause. No, this power is different. It doesn't beg for attention. It commands it. It doesn't rush in. It waits. It watches. It understands. And when you're finally quiet enough, when the buzz of the outside world fades just enough for you to hear something real, that's when it starts speaking. The Quran doesn't try to entertain you. It's not a performance. It doesn't flatter your feelings. It tells the truth, straight, clean, and heavy. And the power of it is that it doesn't yell at you to change. It pulls you toward change, almost silently. A verse at a time, a pause, a breath. A moment of reflection that hits harder than 1,000 headlines. Stillness like that is rare. Most of the world is loud, noisy with opinions, distracting with images, designed to keep your mind moving so fast you never stop to ask why. But the Quran stops you. It slows your heart rate. It brings your mind into the room. It demands your attention not through force, but through presence. Because it knows deep down you're tired of the noise. You're tired of pretending like the world makes sense when it doesn't. You're tired of running after something that never seems to satisfy. So the Quran doesn't chase you. It waits for you to slow down. It waits for you to get quiet enough to actually hear something true. And when that moment comes, when your heart is finally still enough to receive, it speaks with a strength that doesn't need to be explained. You just feel it. In your chest, in your gut, deep in your bones. And the truth is that stillness makes you dangerous. There's a man who is still, who knows how to sit with himself, who knows how to listen, who knows how to walk slowly and with intention. That man isn't easy to manipulate. He's not easy to fool. He doesn't move just because everyone else is moving. He doesn't buy into everything he's sold. He can't be rattled by every storm. He's grounded, rooted, steady. And when you've been grounded by something eternal, something divine, what can the world offer you that compares? You stop being thirsty for validation. You stop being shaken by fear. You start choosing silence over shouting, purpose over popularity, and truth over comfort. That's what happens when the Quran gets into your heart. Stillness becomes your weapon. Peace becomes your posture. And power, the real kind, the quiet kind, becomes part of who you are. Not because you demanded it, but because you humbled yourself enough to receive it. And the world won't understand it, because they've mistaken stillness for weakness, but they'll see it eventually. They'll see it when you walk different, when you speak different, when you stop chasing and start standing. That's when they'll realize stillness isn't the absence of movement. It's the presence of power. There's something about reading the Quran that goes beyond words on a page. You don't just read it, it reflects you. It holds up a mirror, not to your face, but to your soul. And that mirror doesn't blur the edges or soften the image. It's clear, sharp, honest. It shows you exactly who you are, not who you pretend to be, not who others think you are, but the raw, unfiltered truth of your inner world. At first, it's uncomfortable, because most of us walk around carrying masks we didn't even realize we put on. We've gotten used to hiding our flaws, performing for approval, building up a version of ourselves we think people want to see. But when you open the Quran, all of that starts to fall away. The verses begin to speak, not just in general terms, not just in abstract ideas, but directly to you, to your doubts, your ego, your intentions, your silence, your excuses. It knows, and that's what makes it powerful. You could be reading a verse that was revealed over 1,000 years ago, and somehow it feels like it's talking about something you did yesterday, something you thought no one noticed, something you didn't even want to admit to yourself. But the Quran doesn't expose you to shame you. It exposes you to heal you, because you can't fix what you won't face. You can't grow if you won't confront what's holding you back. So the Quran brings it all to the surface, the pride, the envy, the arrogance, the laziness, the fear. Not to condemn you, but to show you, this is what's keeping you from peace. This is what's standing between you and your potential. It forces you to pause, to ask hard questions, to see not just what you do, but why you do it. Are you being generous, or are you seeking praise? Are you being patient or are you avoiding confrontation? Are you being kind or are you just afraid to be honest? That mirror doesn't lie, but it also doesn't leave you broken. It offers you a path forward, a way to clean the smudges, to realign, to become more sincere, more humble, more real. And that's rare. Most things in this world either flatter you or tear you down, but the Quran does neither. It lifts you by humbling you. It corrects you without crushing you. It calls you out, but it also calls you up. And over time, something begins to shift. You start noticing your own patterns. You start hearing your own tone. You catch yourself mid-thought and ask, is this pride? Is this fear? Is this love? And you become more honest with yourself. And that honesty changes everything. It sharpens your choices. It softens your heart. It strips away the layers of performance and lets something real emerge from underneath. That's the transformation the Quran offers. Not a new personality, but a clearer identity. Not someone else, but someone true. And that truth scares people. Because a person who knows themselves, truly knows themselves, is a person who cannot be easily controlled. They aren't swayed by public opinion. They aren't desperate for applause. They aren't building their worth on things that fade. They've seen their soul, and they started the work of aligning it with what's right. That's what the Quran does. It reads you like a book. It shows you who you are and who you could be. It invites you to rise, not in arrogance, but in awareness. So when you look in that mirror, don't turn away. Stand there, face it, let it change you. Because the soul that dares to be seen is the soul that begins to be free. There's a kind of honesty that feels like a warm light. It comforts, it reassures, it tells you what you want to hear. That's the kind of truth most people are used to. The kind that doesn't challenge, that doesn't dig too deep, that keeps you feeling good about yourself even when you're drifting off course. But the Quran doesn't offer that kind of honesty. It gives you the kind that stings before it heals. It speaks in a voice that doesn't sugarcoat, doesn't negotiate, doesn't flatter. It just says it, plain, direct, unapologetic. And at first, that honesty can make you shift in your seat. It presses up against your comfort zone. It calls out things you've tried to ignore, habits, attitudes, desires you've learned to justify. It doesn't whisper, it confronts. And that confrontation is uncomfortable. Because the Quran isn't trying to win you over. It's not trying to make you like. It's not written to impress. It's written to awaken. And sometimes awakening hurts. It hurts to realize you've been sleepwalking through your life. It hurts to face the pride you've been calling a confidence. It hurts to admit the envy you've been dressing up as ambition. It hurts to see how you've been choosing convenience over conscience. But the Quran doesn't stop at discomfort. It pushes you through it. It invites you to dig deeper, to ask, why does this verse bother me? And why am I resisting this message? And what is it revealing about me that I didn't want to see? Because truth isn't always gentle. Sometimes it shakes you. Sometimes it breaks you down just to build you back up, stronger, clearer, more real. That's the kind of honesty the Quran deals in. It speaks on the things we'd rather avoid. Death, accountability, ego, hypocrisy, the weight of our words. The purpose of our time. It doesn't let you hide behind your intentions. It asks what you did. It doesn't let you blame your circumstances. It asks what you chose. It doesn't let you coast. It calls you to rise. And that's hard to swallow in a world that's obsessed with ease. A world where everybody wants to feel good, but few want to be good. A world that teaches you to chase comfort even if it means avoiding truth. But here's the reality. Growth doesn't happen in comfort. Change doesn't happen in silence. The Quran speaks uncomfortable truths because it loves you enough not to lie to you. And if you sit with that honesty, if you stay with it long enough to feel the weight, to wrestle with it, to let it work on your heart, you start to change. Not all at once, but slowly, quietly, consistently. Your excuses lose their power. Your self-deception starts to fade. You begin to crave realness, not reassurance. And that's when you know it's working. You become someone who doesn't run from conviction. Someone who welcomes correction. Someone who would rather be refined by fire than dulled by flattery. And that makes you rare, because most people don't want the truth. They want the feeling of truth. They want peace without the discipline, mercy without responsibility, faith without obedience. But the Quran doesn't play that game. It speaks with authority. It tells you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And in doing so, it sets you free from lies, from delusion, from the prison of your own ego. So yeah, it's uncomfortable, but sometimes discomfort is the doorway to transformation. Sometimes the truth that cuts deepest is the one that saves you. And the ones who can sit in that discomfort, who can take that honesty and still keep reading, those are ones who change. Not just on the outside, but deep, deep, deep within. The Quran doesn't demand blind submission. It doesn't ask you to follow without thought, to nod along without understanding, to believe just because someone told you to. Instead, it invites you, again and again, to think, to reflect, to question, to observe. It treats your mind with respect, not as something to suppress, but as a tool to unlock something deeper. In a world that rewards speed, noise, and distraction, the Quran invites you to slow down and look, not just at the sky or the stars, not just at history or nature, but at yourself. It says, do they not reflect? Do they not consider? Or will they not use their reason? These aren't rhetorical questions. They are challenges, gentle but firm. And they come from a place of knowing exactly how easy it is to live life on autopilot, because most people aren't really thinking. They're reacting, consuming, copying, living out patterns and expectations they inherited but never examined. And they don't even realize it, because the world keeps them busy enough to never ask, why am I doing this? But the Quran interrupts that flow. It's not just a book you read, it's a conversation that turns the light inward. It doesn't force you to believe, it gives you reasons. It lays out signs, evidence, logic. It speaks to your intellect and your soul. It asks you to consider the rain that falls, the seed that sprouts, the heartbeat in your chest. It doesn't say, I'll believe because I said so. It says to look closer, pay attention. Ask yourself, could all of this be by chance? And that's where the invitation becomes powerful. Because the Quran isn't insecure, it doesn't fear your doubts. It welcomes your questions. It says, come with your concerns, come with your confusion, just come honestly. It doesn't shut down your critical thinking, it awakens it. It gives you room to explore, not by wandering aimlessly, but by guiding you back to what's real. That kind of invitation is rare. Most systems, most ideologies don't want you to think too much. They want you to accept, to conform, to repeat. But the Quran keeps pushing you. Reflect, reflect. Why do you live the way you live? What are your intentions? What are your priorities? What will all of this mean when your time runs out? Thinking like that changes you. It sharpens your awareness. It deepens your understanding. It humbles you. Because the more you reflect, the more you realize how much you don't know. But it also empowers you. Because you start to see the patterns, the traps, the illusions. You start recognizing when something feels empty, when a path looks good on the outside but is hollow within. That's the power of divine thought. It clears the fog. It pulls you out of the cycles the world has you spinning in. It reminds you that obedience isn't weakness, it's clarity. That surrender isn't failure. It's the highest form of wisdom when it's directed toward truth. And all of this begins with a simple, profound invitation. Think, not because you're told to, not because it's popular, but because your soul is worth understanding. And once you accept that invitation, once you begin to think deeply, not just about the world, but about your creator, your purpose, your end, you can't go back to sleep. You can't keep living surface level. The Quran opens up a part of you that can no longer be satisfied with shallow answers. So if you feel the stirring, that quiet nudge in your heart, lean in. Let the questions rise. Let the reflections begin. Because the Quran is not threatened by your mind. It's waiting for it, calling to it. And once you start thinking with intention, with sincerity, you'll never look at life the same again. Reading the Quran doesn't just change the way you think, it changes the way you live. And once that shift begins, you start to feel it, the clash, the tension. That quiet, constant friction between what the Quran is calling you toward and what the world is pushing you to become. It's not always loud, it's not always obvious, but it's always there. Because the moment you begin to walk with truth, you realize the world around you has been walking in another direction. It's moving fast, chasing after things that glitter but don't last. It rewards what's easy, what's flashy, what's loud. But the Quran teaches you patience, restraint, sincerity. It tells you that the unseen matters more than the seen. That character is heavier than image. That eternity outweighs the temporary. And that kind of mindset doesn't fit in a world built on short-term gain. You start noticing things. How modesty looks out of place in a society that thrives on exposure. How truth sounds harsh to ears used to being flattered. And the more you align yourself with the Quran, the more out of sync you become with the world's rhythm. You start to walk slower, speak less, think more. You question the trends, the norms, the habits everyone else follows without a second thought. And that's when the resistance starts. People begin to look at you differently. Maybe they don't say it out loud, but it shows in their eyes, in their distance, in their questions. Are you like this now? Or why don't you do what you used to do? Or what's wrong with just having fun? The clash isn't always about big confrontations. It's in the quiet moments, the little compromises you no longer make, the jokes you don't laugh at, the things you choose not to post, the invitations you turn down. It can feel lonely. But that loneliness isn't a punishment, it's a sign. A sign that you're no longer being shaped by the crowd. You're being shaped by something higher. And yes, that comes with sacrifice, but it also comes with strength. The kind of strength the world doesn't understand. The strength to walk away, the strength to hold your tongue. The strength to stay grounded when everything around you is shaking. The Quran doesn't promise you that walking this path will be easy. In fact, it warns you. It'll be hard. You'll be tested, misunderstood, laughed at. But it also tells you this: hold firm, be patient, keep going. Because while the world celebrates what fades, the Quran prepares you for what lasts. So when the clash comes, don't run from it. Embrace it. Let it sharpen your focus. Let it strengthen your resolve. Because the more the world pushes you to bend, the more valuable your ability to stand becomes. And in that clash, your true direction is revealed. Transformation doesn't always look like fire and thunder. Sometimes it doesn't make a sound at all. It happens quietly, in the heart, in the mind, in the small moments no one sees. The Quran understands that. It doesn't demand you become someone new overnight. It simply plants the seed and then, slowly, patiently, begins the work of reshaping you from within. Sometimes transformation is loud. You feel it surge through you, a moment of awakening that shakes your world. Maybe a verse hits you at just the right time. Maybe you witness something that pierces your heart. And in that moment, change feels immediate. It feels urgent. You start praying again. You cut ties with things that were dragging you down. You clean up your speech. You realign your goals. The people around you notice. They say, "You've changed." And they're right. That's the loud kind of transformation. But more often, transformation whispers. It shows up in moments no one claps for. You start watching your tone. You begin to speak less and listen more. You stop justifying your ego and start apologizing with sincerity. You let go of grudges, not because someone forced you to, but because your soul feels lighter without them. That's the quiet kind. And though no one may notice, you feel the difference. The Quran reaches into those silent spaces. It shifts your intentions before it shifts your actions. It makes you pause before you speak. It makes you think twice before judging. And that's the beauty of it. It doesn't just reform your behavior, it reforms your reasoning. It doesn't just tell you what to do, it teaches you why to care. It teaches you why to care. And the thing is, whether loud or quiet, both kinds of transformation are valid. The world might only celebrate the dramatic, the visible, the instant. But real change isn't always made for the spotlight. Sometimes the greatest battles are fought in secret, between you and your thoughts, between your desire and your discipline, between who you were and who you're becoming. So if your growth isn't being noticed, keep going. If your changes feel small, keep going. If it feels like you're just quietly chipping away at old habits and old versions of yourself, keep going. Because transformation doesn't need an audience to be real. Sometimes the quietest shifts are the ones that echo the loudest in eternity.